is WJTV News Channel 12 this morning.
From cover to cover, this book, one thing God is very clear about. He loves poor. He loves the poor. He loves the downcast. He loves the widow. He loves the orphan. The word orphan is abandoned.
Southside Baptist Church flourishes while adapting to the changing community it's a part of. It's Sunday morning. We're putting faith in focus. Change is hard, very hard. So hard, in fact, for a church that some pack up and move away from their changing communities rather than staying and fighting for relevance. Well, Southside Baptist Church in Jackson is in the middle of that fight, and they might be actually holding ground. They're putting faith in focus. Southside Baptist Church probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a vision that, despite changing demographics in Jackson, it would stay, giving when it needed to people who needed it, people like Sean Boyd.
And it came for me coming here to get groceries, to talking to him and crying and just really was just at my last hope. If I wouldn't talk to him, I'd did something real bad.
When he came to the door of our church to get a sack lunch, he was on his way to kill 3 people and himself.
Pastor Jeff Parker is a direct kind of speaker. As a younger man, he took missionary trips, including one to Zimbabwe, where he fell so ill that he could not return to that life. He was called to Southside, and it's where he stayed.
I'm a part of a great denomination, Southern Baptist, but I think where Southern Baptists sometimes struggled was how to transition with the community as leadership would begin to migrate into the suburbs, a lot of times taking not only their skills, but even their resources.
And if you're wondering where this church is, it's this round building right off of Raymond Road, living up to its namesake on the south side of Jackson. And that's something that church leadership prides itself on.
And it began to help me understand that God, even though I was a sick missionary, that God would take that ability to cross cultures and use that to help a church transition through the most difficult task that any church would ever be faced. And that is learning how to relate, to be indigenous to a community when that community is drastically changing.
Jeb taught me how to really embrace being a part of a church, because I ain't never really trusted the church, and being from the urban area, you know, it's hard to trust preachers. But he just guided me through and made me not only love God better, but myself better.
We actually have him in a house now in South Jackson. And in some ways, he's the missionary to the hood.
Pastor Parker says that one of the next goals for the church is opening a shelter for homeless mothers in the community. And if you'd like to share your congregation with the viewers of News Channel 12, you can find my contact information in the faith section of WJTV.com.
I couldn't figure out if the Bible was true, and I believed it was, and there was a heaven to gain, there was a hell to not gain, to lose, why anybody wouldn't serve Jesus.
Discipleship as a youth pastor notes an identity crisis among teens. It's Sunday morning. We're putting faith in focus. During the winter break, there were five suicide attempts made by teenagers who the student pastor says were either close or known by their congregation. So what could prevent this in the future? At Jackson First, only guidance reflecting the life of Jesus is the solution. They're putting faith in focus. Across age groups, the music touches most at Jackson First, an Assembly of God church. Student pastor Wayne Hall says he works weekly with more than 80 youths, many facing serious challenges.
Today, I mean, look at all the social media networks that are available. You know, we live double lives on Facebook and who we are in real life. You know, these kids it's an identity crisis. America is trying to identify itself again, and that includes the family, which is pretty much absent, you know, in the minds of most people.
This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord.
But Senior Pastor Otis Moore reminds us that the problem is not new.
I'll try to tell the story quickly. I grew up in Louisiana, in West Monroe. I lived there all my life. My father was an alcoholic. When my mom remarried, I was 4, and she married a man who wasn't an alcoholic but drank heavily. But I had a grandmother, my mother's mother, who took us to church, to an Assembly of God church, just maybe 5 or 6 blocks from where we live.
And from that time, 3 is his magic number. In a recent private devotion, it struck him that there were just 3 people on an important list in his mind.
And I started naming men in my prayer to God that I was thankful for, that when I was young, and when I was a teenager, that really helped me. And I remembered as a young man wanting to pattern my life after those kind of men rather than some of the men that were in my family that were not living for God, but they just didn't know Jesus.
And at Jackson First, that teaching process is important, subtle, yet sincere.
God has been good to us, hasn't he?
You know, we've seen it, their hunger for people just to be in their lives and to speak into their life. Of course, they're never going to invite you in. You have to earn the invitation.
That's the truth. And as I began to thank God for those men, I began to ask the Lord to help us to have that kind of church. Because that's what life is really about. It's about helping people that can't help themselves until they can, and then they can help others.
And if you'd like the viewers of News Channel 12 to learn more about your church community, you can find my contact information in the faith section of WJTV.com.
Agape represents the love of God. It's the original love. It's the purest form of love. So agape is a fitting name for how God feels about the world.
Agape is also the name of this Jackson church, giving hope by giving purpose. It's Sunday morning. We're putting faith in focus. If you're older, hopefully you have some wisdom. And if you're younger, well, energy and getting all riled up shouldn't really be a problem. These age groups, however, don't always meet eye to eye. But the pastor at Agape Fellowship Church says when the demographics meet, that's when real change in the community happens. They're putting faith in focus. The Pancake Breakfast, a fellowship event so common because it's so effective, especially in getting kids involved.
When it's not holidays, we're in like fellowship down here and kind of talking to each other and like helping out with the elders of the church and things like that.
And when the congregation heads upstairs at Agape Fellowship Church, a large focus remains on children, including, Pastor Burnett Drake says, events outside of the church.
One of the main things, we have a youth rally that we have every year that gather a lot of people come, a lot of children comes, and a lot of churches from, matter of fact, all over come. We live in a world now where so many people are hurting, so many folks are in distress, but we try to offer the answers to those issues there.
Pastor Drake says this is especially true in the area surrounding the Metro Center Mall. He says the answer is getting people involved and giving people goals and responsibilities. By purpose, they believe they're giving life.
You get them early enough, then you can change that child's life, whether it's a male, female, you can change that person's life because you got them early enough.
I treat them like they're my siblings, like my younger siblings, because I've known them for a little bit. And I kind of just want to have them feel like they can come talk to me if they can't talk to their parents or the pastor or anything, because it's harder talking to adults than it is talking to us.
Jesus said, go out and change the world, and that's what we're trying to do here at Agape, through the love of God.
And that youth rally typically happens at the start of the school year, involving former athletes and current musicians and artists. And if you'd like to share your church community with the viewers of News Channel 12, you can find my contact information in the faith section of WJTV.com.